Good morning. I am Carla Cottrell, the chair of the membership committee for the New Smyrna Beach Board of Realtors. We are very excited to have our second roundtable this morning, this time with our great title affiliates. We have Casey Smith from Professional Title.
Morning.
We have Robin Winkler from Celebration Title.
Morning.
And Judy Riker from Fidelity National Title.
Hello.
So we're going to, I'm going to start with a question, but then after that, it's up to anybody to ask whatever they'd like to ask. We'll go from there and see how this turns out.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So throwing this out there and recognizing that each of you may have a little different take, let's start with Robin. Robin, what is title insurance and what is each side paying for?
Okay, so title insurance is insuring your property against liens and defects. It goes 30 years back. So it's not like homeowners insurance where it's protecting your property from it falling down or anything. It's protecting it against maybe probate that happened in the past that wasn't cleared properly, maybe an heir coming back to the house saying they were owed money. So that's when you go up against your title insurance policy. So the seller buys the title insurance policy for the owner, which is called the owner's policy, and then the buyer pays for what's called a lender's policy, and that's to protect the lender. Here where we are at, seller picks title, so seller pays for the owner's policy. There's other places where the buyer picks and buyer pays.
Okay. Anybody?
I'd like to add to Robin's wonderful explanation. The reason that the seller pays title insurance, and we're often asked that here, is because the seller is giving a general warranty deed. So he's generally warranting the property from the time it came from the Spaniards until today, which is a strong warranty. If there were ever a claim against that title, the attorneys could go against the seller because the seller gave the general warranty deed. So the seller says, look, I don't want to be on the hook for this claim, this legal fee, whatever happens in terms of people making a claim against my property. So I'm going to give you, buyer, a title policy. And that's kind of how it originated here in our area, that the seller pays.
Okay. So Casey, in the world of title insurance, does the loan type matter?
Not for us in title insurance. I think that there's clauses we have to utilize for the lender, but in general, the difference would be on the back end on the loan policy and additional endorsements or more affirmative coverage that are required for a lender. So that may yield that a survey is needed for a Florida Form 9, an 8.1, those things. So those would be the only differences that I find that affect us in the everyday world with loans. But if it's VA conventional, those don't change the way that we process the loan and close it and then insure it.
So what if it's a commercial property? Is there a difference in the way you handle commercial property?
There, usually for us, there's a longer turnaround time in generating the commitment. So that is straight out the gate for us. It's usually a longer turnaround time for us to yield the search and the commitment to release to everybody. There tends to be a little bit higher on the search end just because it's more detailed.
Yeah.
There's usually a higher fee as well because it does go back.
Okay.
And usually the commercial people are not the residential people within our companies. The commercial people handle commercial title insurance. The residential people handle residential. And the reason for that is because residential is more like an assembly line where the transaction comes in, the file's open, goes to the processor, items are ordered, then to the closer, closer's done, then to the post-closer after that. Whereas with commercial, one person is pretty much handling the entire thing after the search is done. And what I find in commercial is when you're working on a commercial transaction and someone's emailing you, you better be right there answering those emails. And it's quick and everyone's talking to everyone. In commercial title, I'd say the largest difference is that there's not such a concern about the closing. There's more concern about the title policy. So as a title company, all of us, we're kind of the
Intermediary.
Yeah, good word, Robin. Third party in there between the buyer's attorney, the seller's attorney, and the lender's attorney. They all have different requirements and goals for their title policy coverages that they want. And we have to organize that for all three of them and make sure that all three, as well as our own underwriters, are happy with the title policies that were written.
Yeah,
Not so in
Everything's
residential.
complied with.
There's a lot of back end stuff too, because usually you've got leases, you've got rents, you've got all of that stuff. So they really have to be on the ball to make sure that all of the ducks are in the row when you're putting everything on the settlement statement too.
Okay. Anna?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about attorneys doing closings and not title companies. They can go, do you have to have a title company close your property, or can your attorney handle the whole thing?
Well, we're representing a title company here, Anna, so we would prefer, and we can do the
So
closings.
title companies are backed by attorneys. Like we have an attorney on staff, they have attorneys.
What about the legal aspect of it?
Yeah,
Oh, we have
no.
legal underwriting
There's
teams,
there's
law.
certain states that are attorney states, and you have to use an attorney to close, and then the title company is just the escrow holder. But we have all of it encumbered in one. So there is no benefit between using an attorney or a title company, other than the attorney is gonna charge your buyer and seller a ton more money.
Yeah.
And just like them saying, well, I want my attorney to review the contract or their title docs, it doesn't make any sense. It's the
just a
same
general
stuff.
question. I like the fact that
Yeah.
Florida is a title.
No, it's a great question, because a lot of people don't know that we do have attorneys. Like,
Yeah.
we have attorneys.
Right.
Oh, I almost knocked the table
Just a
over.
little dialogue, having closed with 5 attorneys in the last 2 weeks.
Ooh,
Gee, the attorney's not here, he's on vacation. Oh. Gee, oh, I didn't get that over to you, well, I'll send it to you. And 2 days later, we get the final closing document from. Gee, the seller is here, the buyer's here, but their attorney is in Chicago. Little $5.6 million deal. Closed last week. Funding was yesterday.
Oh, my.
oh. I think I'd be a really mad seller if I was getting $5.6 million a week later. I'm just saying.
Got a closing tomorrow. Again, a little $2.2 million. We don't have a survey. We have different parts of surveys. Trying to get a survey done. Again, this is going through attorney who was doing part of one and doing the other. What are we seeing? So, excuse me, I have to have my long dissertation.
You're fine.
So we're closing tomorrow. 1031 exchange. Here's the money. Here's the boot that we know that's going to be there. We have, we know what the contiguous properties are. We've got 4 different parcels. We've got a 40-acre farm, a 4,000 square foot home, and another home. Okay, now we don't know whether we're going to have the survey of the whole property. We've got all the parcel numbers and all this stuff, and we know that's the right one. How important is it to me to tell my buyer that no, tomorrow we're not going to close because our surveyor's not gotten the job done?
I wouldn't close without looking at the survey, especially on something like that. There's no way.
It's telling you what you're purchasing. I mean, that's going to define the boundary lines
But
of
you got
the
all
property.
legal descriptions there. Excuse me, I
But-
mean the devil.
Right, but you can see it laid out, you have it there. If you were doing anything on the property in the future too, you're going to need a survey.
There could be an
Anything-
easement running straight through the house that you don't know about.
Especially if they're separated parcels, I think you have more of a
Yeah,
concern than just a
right-of-ways.
one.
Without a survey, Tom, we will not give survey coverage. And so that's really important in commercial and residential transaction. And when we talk about claims later, I can give you some examples of some misfits that happen without surveys. So if the buyer wants to have survey coverage on his $2.6 million investment, he will need to wait for the survey.
And we don't require the surveys. Title, we don't require it. The lender requires it because they want what's called a Florida Form 9 endorsement. It doesn't matter to us if they have a survey or not. We could care less.
I would
But-
encourage it, actually.
But the lender
I
does.
encourage it.
Yeah.
So if they're telling you, well, the lender says, no, if the lender wants Florida Form 9, you have to have a survey. We get a lot of cash deals and people don't get surveys. We encourage, like they say, to get a survey. I would never not get a survey, but we also do this for a living. But if they're getting a loan, they have to have a survey.
Also on the surveys, it's a good idea to get a new survey Because when you're using these prior surveys, you have no idea what the properties around you have done. So if there's someone that had something built that's encroaching in your property, it's not going to show on that prior survey. So a lot of times now with the prior surveys, if we're asked to utilize them, we're doing searches for notice of commencements as much as we can on the property itself, and then having different affidavits signed, more comprehensive affidavits by both parties if they're going to utilize a prior. So new surveys are a great idea on any property, cash or with a loan.
Well, and they have to pay to get it recertified anyway, so they might as well just get a new one.
That's a good point, Casey.
That really was.
Numbers. I've got somebody, Tom came in, said, fine, such and such died, we now have this property, 120 feet deep water intercoastal, and we want to sell it for $3 million. Will you handle it for us? What are you going to charge us? Gee, do you have a survey? Yeah, I do, but it's 6 years old. I suggested they get a new survey. Well, the old one should be good.
What
That's the risk they would
about
take.
being,
That's their risk.
what, so many years that you're allowed to use the old one?
Oh,
Not that
yeah.
you should, but you can, right?
Can.
Like up to 10 years, 8
Well,
years.
But you're talking about
Depends.
from a seller standpoint.
I'm talking about from those standpoints. I'm going to be the one that's bringing, hopefully, the buyer to the table. And the seller is sitting there, no, I'm not going to give you a new survey. And I've had to do a number of these recently. Again, just, they're going to come back and look at Tom Alcorn.
Well, the buyer pays for the survey, so if the buyer wants a survey, the buyer needs to pay for one.
And maybe that's something you should be encouraging up front when you're meeting with these buyers, is encouraging them as a part of their costs, incorporating the survey in there and educating them on why they should get a new survey every time they purchase property.
And I was trying to get the seller to do the survey. Oh,
Yeah.
You're coming in.
On your price point.
Go and do the.
Yeah, right.
inspection, do the wind mitigation, do all this stuff, so you want to close in 10 days?
Yes.
Great, you want someone who's got $3 million, I can bring it to the table, but I need all this documentation.
Have it ready.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example, Tom. In the Bethune area, where you have the two, there's the house on one block, and then you have across the road, there's
Right.
the dune walkover. We have had many problems where realtors will write a contract for the lot that the house is on and not the lot across the street with the dune walkover. And we have had to go back after closing and get a corrective deed from that seller to transfer that dune walkover. We've also had situation where that dune walkover was not transferred and the new buyer had to pay quite a sum of money to get it from the person, two people back in the chain.
Oh, wow.
Had you had a survey when that was done, you would have seen that here's this property in Bethune. It's all those Bethune lots. There's 7 pages of them. In fact, I keep the 7 pages by my desk, and whenever we get a Bethune property, we check, Jamie and I check, and the girl that opens the orders checks and makes sure that you guys have written the contract right, and we have both parcels. We check the deed before we even get that title search ordered, so that we can make sure we've got both parcels. But a survey would tell you if you've got that other piece that's so important to get them to the beach or not. So that's just one example of how you
Good
would use
example.
it.
That's a good one, because that's no fun getting
No.
corrective deeds done.
And then trying to get the survey right now. Last quote I had from Brand X was 6 months.
Yikes.
Yeah.
6 months to get a survey.
But not on a standard lot block.
Yeah.
That must be a significantly larger, or
Yeah.
the ocean,
What are they running now, standard lot blocks as far as time frame?
350. Oh, time frame?
Yeah.
I would say
Last-
you should guess about 5 to 7 days,
Yeah,
maybe
last
10,
year
but
I was in 6 days,
you,
so.
usually within that time frame is,
It depends on the area of town too.
That
Like,
too.
You're not using the local surveyors, are you?
Longs is the
Yeah,
one that does it quickly for me on just a block.
And
I mean, like,
Target.
if you need Corey or a specialist or something.
Yeah.
that's
right,
different,
Sliger.
but-
Mhm.
that's who we use as long on all of ours.
Yeah. So-
Yeah.
They're good for the easy ones.
Yeah, that's
Right, your
fine.
standard
Yeah.
lot
The
blocks,
standard ones,
yes.
You can just get one. Okay, so we talked a lot about buyers and sellers and what lenders need and all of that, and you alluded to some cash issues. When a property is going in a 1031 exchange, can you discuss what that process looks like, and what, if there are differences in the responsibilities of the title folks?
I find it to be seamless at this point.
Yeah, it goes through an exchange company and we talk right with them.
And they're they're experts in what they do.
Yeah.
And it's a steady steady flow of communication, and it's again, I find it to be very seamless.
But not always. The last one that we closed last week, that was a 1031 exchange.
Well, your price point may be different. I mean,
Right.
I know that with the
And sometimes
1031s,
with the exchange company, who are they
Yeah.
using for
Yeah.
their exchange company?
I think it was Brand X who was representing the seller as far as the legal and the title and all that. But again, it was oh, well, what about this? Gee, you want who you want? And there are we had the great 1031 exchange people in last week here in the office, and they were talking about all the ramifications. But you think it's all going to be taken care of, and everybody's looking at the realtor. Well, you knew or should have known.
I'm going to knock on wood, I have not yet experienced
neither.
a negative 1031.
So for the
Title companies have been great.
Yeah, thank
For the
you.
people who are out there in YouTube land, leave it to Robin. Can someone briefly discuss what a 1031 exchange is so they'll know what this language is that we're using? Maybe Judy, you had a lot of experience in that area.
Sure.
I was going to say the same thing. Judy?
So a 1031 exchange is a vehicle that a buyer and seller can use to defer their tax bite. It's not going to take the tax away. It's going to defer the tax bite of the capital gains that they would gain from selling the property. And if you buy a piece of property, you use you purchase it and then you sell it, and then you use the 1031 exchange to go buy another one, and then you sell that and you go buy another one and you sell that. What you're doing is you're deferring all the capital gains from those properties. You might be able to take the money that you get from one property and buy 2 more. When you sell those, you might be able to take the money from those 2 and buy 4 more. So you're building your real estate wealth all the while not paying capital gains. When does it hit you? When you're 72 and you don't have as much money that you're earning, and so that your tax bite would be a whole lot less. And so that's the idea behind deferring the taxes.
They're on investment properties.
Investment only, yes, exactly.
They're not on residential.
Right.
All right.
Question. So I hadn't heard about this. I'm old, but the people I'm dealing with are ancient. And so one of the partners was 85 and the other one was 94. So it was really interesting.
Wow.
Both
Good for them.
partners are still alive.
right?
So what happens in a 1031? Great, we've got this property, we sold it, now we're buying a 1031 property. Comes in, it has to be in the individual's name, can't be in the name of the husband and wife, whatever. And the buyer passes away.
Probated.
Probate.
Okay, but what happens as far as, like if they owned it now, before they did the exchange, they pass away, it goes to their heirs, it's all brought up to the current value of the property. So there is no capital gains, correct?
If both parties pass, then the capital gains is reset to the moment, the value at death.
Right. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
So what happens if we've got a 1031? Does that affect that at all? In other words, here is John bought the property, a month later, 5 months later, he passes away. His heirs get the stepped up value. They don't have to go back. It
Right.
basically eliminates that. Is that correct?
And that's, with all due respect, that wouldn't be title, that would really be deferred
Exactly,
to
yeah.
a specialist, a CPA or something, because we try to remove ourselves from
As you should.
answering, questions that pertain to IRS and taxes. I mean, we end up being that vehicle to help the 1031 tax exchange companies and reporting to the IRS, but we kind of step back when it comes to answering those specific questions.
We're supposed to know everything. That's the reason I'm amazed that
Yeah.
there's not more people at these classes.
Yeah.
Just what do you do and how do you answer them instead of, call Judy.
Sometimes that's
We
easier.
do want you to call our affiliate members. We do want you to use them as your expert people, but they have areas of expertise just like we do. We aren't allowed as realtors to practice law, neither are they.
Right.
Yeah.
And not everything's black and white.
Right.
So this, you could tell us one aspect of a situation, but there's so much more to it because we know buyers and sellers don't like to tell you the full story. And then we're gonna get on the phone and then we're gonna find out there's way more to it that's going on. And then we can say, okay, well, you know, this is the attorney that we use, this is our exchange company that we have a relationship with, or this is a question for our attorney that's on staff. Let me go ahead and give you that information, because it's not all cookie cutter. Everything's very weird. And just to say, well, my brother's sister's cousin did this and said that this was okay, well, great, well, it's probably a different situation. We need to.
So we need to put on the bottom of the screen, consult tax attorneys for tax-related questions and.
Their CPAs or
Or
accountants.
CPA.
Yeah.
That's good advice, yes.
Yeah, certified
Because
public
we get
accounts.
into all the anecdotal kind of thing. Oh, well,
Yeah.
this happened on this one, or this is what.
Yeah, we're private investigators as well. You know, we have to investigate everything,
And just because
just like you guys are therapists.
Yeah, right.
Since we're talking about CPAs, I mean, that's a good thing for you guys too. Anytime you have a foreign seller or a buyer that's purchasing from a foreign seller, you should have your parties speaking to those CPAs probably prior to you writing the listing agreement or the contract, but definitely have them educate themselves with those specialists to know how that's going to work. I mean, when it gets to us, we will help and we will guide to those specialists. But those, again, are not items that are actually a title issue. We're just a part of the facilitation of foreign seller
And
situations.
then there's that whole new thing, or not a whole old thing that's come out with the people coming in, the foreign nationals. 60% of the property that was sold in Florida in the last year went to foreign nationals.
Yeah.
I believe it.
So, a question over here?
Yeah, so I am dealing with a FERPTA sale
Sorry
right now
about
on the listing side.
You had to bring
And
up
the buyer, I'm using Moats Accounting,
Oh, Pam?
and the buyer didn't want to complete some of the forms that Moats requested were to complete because she needed to give her social security number. And she was not having it. Like she did not want to share that information. Unfortunately, her agent got involved and said, this all seems very fishy to me.
No,
It's-
not at all.
It's the law.
It's the law.
It's the law.
Somebody has to pay the taxes.
So the buyer is the responsible party per the law.
Right. So does she have to complete those forms? You say
Yes.
it's the law.
Yes.
Yes, if she wants
Yes,
to
if she wants
proceed.
that property, yes.
Yes.
You can show her this video.
As we're all shaking our heads the whole time going, yes, yes.
She didn't
Well-
have an experienced agent, because somebody who's been through it a little bit knows that that's what you have to do.
A little
Correct.
late for them, so.
Was that too
I
late?
said it's a little late for
I
them.
know.
I think it's with you guys, so I think it got resolved, but I kind of went, oh God, wait a minute, what is she not gonna do, you know? So then I got worried. We did put it on the disclosure that it was a FERPTA, right? And we did what we were supposed to do. We contacted the accounting firm ahead of time so the seller was ready to go when it went under contract, but that was a new one for me.
And with regard to the seller and getting the accounting firm involved, the seller has to have an identification number. And a lot of sellers and realtors don't realize that they have to have that. So, and the reason is because that 15% is going to get sent to the IRS. If it's sent without an ID number, do you think there's any way that money's going to come back to that seller? It's not. It's like us not using a social security number and paying our taxes. Excuse me. So, it's best to get that started early. And when you go with someone like the Moats Group, which is approved by Fidelity National Title, which is what Casey and I are with, and Chicago and those guys, they know how to do that. They're agents for the IRS. They can take a certified copy of the person's passport and they can work with the IRS to get that number. But
Yeah,
without
they'll get the number.
We can't go forward.
And it's also requiring the seller to file a tax return. I mean,
Correct.
that's what the whole purpose is. We all have to do that regardless of whether or not we're, you know, US citizens or a foreign seller. So it's having the foreign seller file that tax return and then finding out what may or may not go back.
What about when they're setting up a new tax ID or a new LLC or something like that? Does it still go back to the individuals?
That's
John
a
Jones is
FERPTA
in Saudi
question.
Arabia.
That's a FERPTA question to ask the FERPTA accountant. But there's differences in how many people are in the LLC. So if you have X amount of people in the LLC, then it's not considered a foreign corporation. If you have
Sole member.
Y amount, yeah, sole member, then it is considered. So there's different considerations there. Good questions, though.
Anybody else? Okay, so one of the things that I like to know when I'm working with people is, what do you expect of me?
Everything.
So can you? Miracle. Thank you, Robin. So, miracles, right. So, but I think it would be really good to talk about what you expect from your realtor partners.
When you submit the contract to the title company, provide us contact information for your sellers and buyers.
Right away.
Right away. That is the fastest way for us to help them and help you.
And avoids fraud.
Correct, especially.
Well, and set
Avoids
expectations with your buyers and your sellers. Let them know, hey, you're under contract. We're working with so-and-so at X title company. They're going to be reaching out to you. They're going to need your social security numbers. They're going to be asking for information. Because if you don't set that expectation, and then when the processor or the contract specialist calls them, they're like, who are you? What are you talking about? Why do you want my social security number? And then they freak out and their hair catches fire. And then they're calling you guys, and then you guys are thinking there's something going on, and then you guys are calling us, and then your hair's on fire. So it's just setting that expectation up front and letting them know, like, hey, this is kind of the process, and they're going to reach out to you, and they're going to be your go-to throughout the stage of everything. Because we want to get it closed just like you guys want to get it closed, and we want to become that contact for you guys instead of them calling you all the time. Letting them be comfortable with us and knowing that, hey, I'm handing the ball over, they've got this.
So I've got a couple of things I want to add to answer the question, then we can, when we send you the closing statement, look at it, please, right away. Yeah, because we're waiting. You know, there's a lot of times if we're working with the lender, we send you the closing statement, we can't get this, we're waiting for the CD, and then we're working with you and the lender and trying to get it all approved. Sometimes with the seller, we need to get that done early. We'll try to have it to you a couple days ahead of time anyway, so that your seller's prepared. And then, you know what's really helpful is if you would go over that closing statement with your customer. And I want to say 80% of the closings, maybe higher, that I do, when I come in and sit down with people, I say, have you seen the closing statement? Do you have any questions? They're like, I've seen it, no questions. I said, good, we can sign. So that saves a lot of time as opposed to going over those numbers there in the closing. If the seller's already prepared and he's reviewed it, we just have a signing party. If the buyer's already prepared and should be, he's already wired the amount of money he needs to wire. So if you do that for us, that is very, very helpful, as opposed to, oh, we have all these questions on the closing statement. Where did that come from? Here at the last minute when we're all supposed to be signing in and getting them on their way. And the other thing I would say is if you have commission disbursement agreements, get them to us in a timely manner. So you know what commission disbursement agreements are? If we're paying the realtor something and they're getting if we're writing the realtor's personal check out of our closing, get that to us in a timely manner. Make sure we have that in our file, because we have had closings where we're writing the check back to the brokerage and the realtor says, well, I'm supposed to have a check here. We're like, well, we don't have a commission disbursement agreement, then we have to call your broker. Then it just delays things. So just those kinds of things would be helpful to us. Thank you.
Do you have a form for the CBA, or
You just write it to
an email
us.
is fine? Check your math twice, because I've screwed up.
Well, and it's got to come from your
has to come from the
broker.
broker.
It has, yes.
Well, there you go.
Bad math.
Yeah.
We heard at one of the sessions in the last week or two that the person, I think it was the 1031 exchange speaker, said, put all the contact information for buyer and seller on the last page of the contract. And all the realtors in the room went, because they don't want buyers and sellers seeing that and calling each other.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Making a mess of the deal.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's got to be a different way, but that's what that person preferred.
Most title companies have a form that they're going to send to you that has all the buyer and seller information. 99% of the agents already have their own form, and when we receive a contract, I mean, they've got everything on there, which is nice. If they don't, you know, we'll reply back and say, hey, I need your seller contact and your buyer contact, and then we're just gonna call them and get everything anyways. But yeah, no, I wouldn't put it on the contract because you don't want them to start negotiating things behind your back.
It's really, really important to get it to us for the buyer, because we want to reach out to them, as Judy was talking about, with in regards to wire fraud. The sooner we can make the contact and provide them the information in regards to safety and protecting them against that, the better. So we try to get that out very quickly. In our office, we try to do it within several hours of receipt of the contract. We send a message that indicates a secure portal with a 2-part authentication. It has a wire fraud video. I mean, if you ever wanted to see one, we could send you a sample of that so you know what your buyers are seeing. But it really helps with protecting and safety against wire fraud. So the sooner we can have the contact, the better. But you have to give it to us.
We have wire fraud insurance, so we don't really have to worry about that.
I was at the same meeting that he's talking about, and that was the same issue that they were talking
Yeah,
about.
that'd be wild.
And it was a great idea.
Could you imagine having that on the contract?
We'll make one statement for those of us that are follically challenged, not have hair on fire, so discrimination here.
You still have some right here. You're good.
You have fuzz on fire.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to use that, fuzz on fire. That's my new one now.
I feel bad laughing.
Oh my God, right?
Bus coming by, being thrown under here. No, but after that comment, I thought that was a great idea, and so what I'm going to be doing is putting down on a separate issue or a separate sheet of paper. Here's all the information that you need as the closing agent. But yeah, I've had that happen where they're talking to each other or the other. Yeah.
Makes things awkward.
Oh, that's fun when you're in a closing and the buyer and sellers are negotiating and arguing. That's so fun.
So what should we, then, we know that we should be good duties and give all the information and be communicative and take your calls when you call us and all of that sort of thing. What sort of updates and things can we expect from the title company?
We have a product now, Carla, that it's called In Here, and it's not an app, so it's nothing that's outside of our company. You actually get in here into our system, and it will tell you when the earnest money deposit has been received, when the commitment is out, when the closing statements are ready. So it takes you through the main pieces that you are concerned about as a realtor in terms of the
It can be done as push notifications as well.
Yes, and then we can also send copies out to you. So copies of the commitment, through that whole system, and it's all very safe because you are inside our system in the Fidelity firewalls. And that's one thing about our company is that, you know, we're 12.5 billion. We do business all over the country, and we have to have the strongest firewalls. We are constantly coming against phishing attempts and other types of things that are, I mean, I want to say something like 8,000 attempts a week we get throughout the company in terms of phishing and hackers trying to get in, because look at the information that we have. In fact, when we send out our packages back to the lender, we don't even put Fidelity National Title as a sender, we put FNT. Because when they see title there at the UPS or the FedEx, those packages are worth more than $100, because inside of them is everybody's social security numbers and where they work and everything like that. And they have been stolen. I haven't heard of anything lately. Jamie, have you? But we had a run on that for a while.
We use we have a pizza tracker. We have proprietary stuff to us, and it literally looks like a pizza tracker. And you'll get an email and a text message. We don't let you into our systems, and it'll go push out to you guys, and it says it'll have your commitment attached, the EMD will be attached, and kind of like what she says, it walks you through the file and it gives you information, and it's, of course, it's all CTG confetti branded, and it literally walks you through. It says 1, and then it'll move to 2 when your second one comes out, and 3, and then when it gets to like your pizza's ready, pretty much, it says, you know, congratulations, you're all set to close, and then it has everything in there for that as well. But they try to keep you, all title companies, we try to make sure that you know ahead of time what's going on and where things are going, because it cuts down on the phone calls.
So another part of, most of us meet in the closing room, right? I mean, we meet at professional events, but the most time we spend together is probably behind closed doors in a closing room. I have been in some closings with both parties at the table that have been a little awkward because of the realtors in the room. Tell us what you expect of realtors when they're sitting in a closing.
Sit quietly.
Professionalism.
Don't schedule your buyers and sellers together.
Especially if you feel that there is something that would be
The-
uncomfortable. I mean, you know that we don't.
Right. Well, and the seller takes 5 minutes. They have like 6 documents to sign. The buyer takes 45 minutes. The seller doesn't want to sit there through the whole closing. Get your sellers in there first and let your sellers go ahead and leave, and then bring the buyers in, let the buyers close, and then, you know, do your thing afterwards. Because it's a little awkward, especially when you have those different personalities that are going on.
We don't have signing parties anymore ever since COVID. So the seller comes in separately and the buyer comes in separately, and that's been working so well. Sometimes people do want to come together. It's probably 1 in 10 maybe that happens, right, Jamie? And then the rest of them, they're just all separate. And it really gives each party their personal time with their personal closing.
So you said, sit quietly. I want to know more about that, Judy, because that's where I was going in my head.
That's the time for us to work with your client. And so I've been in closings where the realtor's like da 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 da, and I'm trying to go over the documents with the buyer. And we don't just like shove them at them and say sign here, sign here. I mean, we say what the note is, we go over what the mortgage is, we give a little bit of explanation so they don't feel like we're just throwing them in with sign here, right? So when the realtor is constantly trying to make communication, you know, sometimes I'll see those buyers like get closer to me or something, and they're not being able to hear. And then, you know, I'll have to talk louder. So if I talk louder, that's a sign that they should be more quiet. But if they don't, sometimes I'll just say, well, can we just focus a little bit here? And then everybody kind of, you know, gets the point in a very, very nice and professional way. But it's really for your clients there. And I know everybody's excited and all that, and that's really good, but it's really for them. And it's a big purchase, it's a big sale. There's a lot of money transferring, and we try to act like bankers because we're handling a lot of money. So
For the benefit of new realtors who may be watching this, the reason why I asked the question is because I've been in closings where, yes, you can be eager as all get out. This is your first closing as a realtor, or whatever this case may be, but your area, this isn't your area of expertise. And I've seen realtors in closings try to act like they know more than the title person.
And explain a document.
And explain the documents, but they're not doing it right. And they shouldn't be doing it at all because it's not their area of expertise. So I guess that's kind of where I was going, like, let the title people do the title work. Let you do the realtor work. Let the lawyers do the lawyer work.
Well, that's why
stay in your lane is what I'm.
that's why we don't like you guys going over the closing statement with your people when you get it, because you don't necessarily know what you're looking at or what you're talking about. And then they come and they're going to have normally, sometimes they have more questions than they would normally if we go over it. It's more so for you guys to make sure that the seller concessions are there and your commission and all that. So, and then we kind of go over that.
However,
If the realtor knows what they're doing, please go over the closing statement.
Yes.
If you don't know what you're doing, don't go over the closing statement.
Yes, please.
more to the point that when we
Yes.
can, we're getting those out in advance so people can ask questions.
Yeah, they can
And the
always
questions
call
should
us.
come prior to the closing, not at the closing table.
Yeah.
So that's why we make efforts to get it out. So if you don't understand it, then ask us a question. I mean, that's the purpose of it, is the questions are to be before the signing.
Or tell them to call us. You know what? You have questions? Here, call call Casey and she'd be more than glad to go over all of this with you prior to you getting the closings.
But Carla, there is a way to handle that kind of a realtor, and you just have to be experienced and professional enough to do it. So if in fact someone starts this explaining of the documents or wants to come in, I'll just let them, and then I'll say, you know, that is a really good point. They have made a great point. You have chosen a good realtor. They really know what they're doing. So let's continue to go forward. And after about 2 times of that, they're fine. They're fine. They just want to be recognized. They just want to be a part of it. So invite them in, let them be a part of it a little bit, and then just go forward. And I find that it just is all the way you handle it, and it works out good.
Not to mention title agents tend to be control freaks.
Obsessive compulsive, yeah.
A little.
That's the end of the month.
Yeah.
I had one of the closings and one of the agents was doing that, and this was back in the day and you could speak. And the closing agent just looked at the realtor and said, how good is you do have your errors and omissions insurance, right? Why? We'll talk after the meeting, but you might be needing that.
Oh, that's so funny.
And that pretty much, they didn't say anything else.
Oh my God.
But they were very upset, and you could see all the.
Yeah. Wow.
So I want to chat them up high and hope that you brought your daughter along and all that, but when it gets to the rest of this, here it is, any questions, fine.
Can I add like one tip, and this is just for me because I feel like that this is kind of aggravating. I don't see a whole lot where the realtors are trying to like chime in and explain the documents. What I see is you guys are sitting there on your phones, texting and emailing and working probably on another deal. And I feel like if you're there for your buyer, your seller, be present. Be present with them. Don't be on your phone. Don't go out and take a call. Like, you're making a lot of money off of that transaction. You only have a few minutes that you need to actually sit in there. It's your last, your last hoorah with them. Just be present, because that just, for me, kind of gets under my skin a little bit when I'm seeing them there, especially first-time home buyers or maybe the sellers, leaving their house that they lived in for 45 years, and the agent's like this. Kind of paying it, and it's like, just be present. It's not that long, and then you're gone. Just, I don't know, that's.
I want to hear them on their Mac, like that was one I was at.
Doing this?
It was 2 sets of people, and it was, I mean, I can't even do it right because she had the nails.
The nails,
It was like.
yes.
So closing that.
I'm sorry, I just have to, I'm sorry. They'll do that, and they're typing in the middle of the closing, and it's, I don't know, that's just me, maybe. I don't do a whole lot of closings anymore, but when I do, I just think it's like, just be present.
Yeah,
I think
closing etiquette.
would be a good tip. I don't know if you guys see that, but.
Still, after 25 years of doing this, I still learn something, at every closing.
Yeah.
Well, it's always evolving. We're learning too. So.
And to be listening to what y'all are saying, it's like, oh, I knew that. Oh, yeah, I knew that. Oh, gee, I didn't know that before, so.
Or the 2,500 new forms they've put into lender packages that are different.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's always interesting too. I like when I see that, and I'm like, oh, this is something new. Hold on, let me read this.
Anybody else have a question?
So, we're getting the documents to you, as quickly as we can, because we want to make sure that there's no glitches. Is there anything else that we can be doing to make your job easier? We've talked about, here's the information on both parties, here's, getting the documents, here's the 1031, make sure that all that stuff is out there. Is there anything like the etiquette? Gee, we would really like it if you all would do this for us.
Answer your phones, because if we can't get a hold of your buyers or your sellers, we're going to call you, and more than likely they're going to talk to you guys. But answer your phones. You expect us to answer our phones. We want you to answer too, because we're not calling you just to call you. Usually they're calling because they can't get something from your client.
I think, Tom, to answer that would be to help us mitigate an issue. So if we have a title problem that we're trying to work out, if it's involving maybe an estate and there's some glitches with that, or some easement issue, or some unsatisfied mortgage, and your client is upset, that's a kind word, upset, because they don't understand what we do for a living, and they're like, why can't I close when I want to? I think if you would help us as a member of our team to be that third leg in our three-legged stool, the realtor, the title company, and the lender, to all work together. And we never throw anyone under the bus. You know, even with lenders, if they're not getting us documents in time, or they tell us there's no way this is going to close, but you all are being told that it's going to close, and we're all waiting until 6 o'clock and nothing happens. We're just like, well, you know, it didn't happen. We'll get it done tomorrow. No worries, you know, and we'll just work through that. But to help us just to stay on our team as we would stay on your team, so that we work together as a team for the buyer and the seller.
And I would say in regards to, there's a lot of mail-away transactions nowadays. And when you have a buyer or seller that's not going to be here, that communication should be given to us as soon as possible. We're more than happy to then figure out the logistics, but it's much harder when we're finding out at the last minute, especially when you have buyers. Like they need to know the expectations, and that should be on the lender as well, but it's helpful if we're all communicating how that process is going to work. A big problem we have regularly is with buyers with loans and them not being present and not realizing they should be in the same location, or we have delays in funding and dispersing because of those logistics that we're not able to be ironed out ahead of time or more efficiently. So the more communication.
That's a really good one. If they're not going to be here, as soon as you know, let us know.
And it's not going to fund till the day after. So just prepare your sellers. Closing date's the 23rd, but they're not getting their money till the 24th. That is just it. So help us with that.
And that's because we have to have the original documents back in hand.
Yes.
Okay.
I went the other day, out at Oak Hill, finding people wanted to buy it. The lady wanted to sell it. Gee, here it is. Do we have a survey on the property? No, but go ahead and sign this. And we closed, but we had the legal description. Got a call back from the buyer saying, Tom, I was down and there's an easement, but the surveyor says that it's never been recorded. So sent that on to the title company. Next day I get, here the document is, and here's where it's recorded. Somebody on the surveyor side missed it, but it's great to know that I'm dealing with some people. They knew what was going on, everybody was fine with it. We should have all these things, no, that's okay, we're gonna do it. And yet you have that glitch coming back, and that's the reason that we and my company and I depend on you guys to make sure that, yeah, Tom, you were a little bit flippant there, and you really should have done this, and I've been called on that, and it's appreciated because I want to be professional.
Well, the surveyor gets a copy of the title commitment, so they should have had it, and if they didn't have it, then I don't know why they didn't have it, but.
They're just saying when they went over, they were talking to when the surveyor was trying to get the information, there was the document that had been filed, that was stamped, that there was an easement, and it was a legitimate easement. They said they could find it.
Oh, they couldn't locate the easement.
Yeah, they couldn't find it.
They could find the document, but they said it wasn't stamped.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, here it is and it's stamped, so you guys are great.
And again, glitches happen, and that's the important piece, is to be communicating amongst our teams that we're all on the same team with the same goal.
Yeah.
So although glitches can happen in many different aspects of what we all do, we all have to be supportive of the fact that we're all trying to get to the same place, which is that closing table. There shouldn't be anyone in a transaction that's trying to get in the way of that or impede that. So
What you're all seeing is closings now. I've got people say, oh, it's terrible and you can't find anything and there's nothing for sale. Yet the people I've talked to, the closings are continuing. Are you seeing that spiral down that we saw?
We're not, no.
It's steady.
A lot of cash transactions.
a lot of cash
A
transactions.
lot of cash. A lot
Higher
of
than I've
cash.
ever had.
I agree, a lot of
I
cash.
saw that on the statistics,
Yeah.
that lately there's more
Yeah,
cash buyers.
those statistics that just came out
Yeah.
were very illustrative of that.
Any speculation for what's going to happen in the next 6 months?
Oh, gosh. Don't answer that question.
That's a lender question.
That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's not answer that question.
No.
Okay, so, you probably all have been in this long enough, well, you have all been in this long enough to have an interesting story for us. a case that, of course, without mentioning any names or whatever, that you were grateful for the company that you work for because they provided some relief, or you found was the perfect justification for having title insurance to begin with, or something. Who wants to go first?
I have a funny story.
Okay, love a funny one.
Oh my God. It's been many, many years ago, and it was two buyers, and there was the sellers, and they had to do the where you sign the different, I don't remember the name of the document, where you have to sign when you see the different variations of your names.
Yeah.
And he looked at hers and he's like, oh, well, what name is that? And she goes, oh, that was my married name. And he looked at her and said, what are you talking about, your married name? You were married before? And I was like,
Oh no.
That happens a lot.
oh my God. And I'm like, so he's mad. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm gonna leave you two guys alone. And I got up and I left the room, and I'm thinking, holy S. He didn't know she was freaking married. They're never gonna sign. But because when I go over the non-ID, I'm like, oh, it's usually this or that. And then they looked at it. So I was like, oh my God, talk about embarrassing. They're probably divorced now, I don't know. But he was not happy. They finished signing, but I guarantee you that ride home was not fun, but because he did not know. I don't know how you don't know. Like that's how I found out my husband had been married before. When you do your marriage, you got to fill it asks you that on your marriage certificate.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe he wasn't there, but yeah.
So that's an interesting point for new realtors out there who have not been in a closing yet. That alias sheet can be a little like shocking.
Yeah.
Can somebody tell what that is?
It's,
like, what is that?
So it can be human error. It can be, like I had a gentleman that it was actually a SunTrust, now Truist. They make you sign the variations of those names, so people get very upset. And he had to sign a variation that was his first name with his ex-wife's maiden last name. And he was like, I'm not doing it. So how you explain that is at some point they applied for something jointly. Whoever the human error keying that in just keyed it in wrong. So when they're pulling up all that information on a lending end, that variation may show. You're not saying that's who I am. It's just a part of that. And usually I encourage them to sign it the best that they can.
And we apply a lot for things online for credit-wise. So it's
in the search to make sure you're assigning property in a correct legal name. That's where those aliases come from?
This is on a lending end.
Where do they come from?
the lender
This is a
credit
lending
report.
Okay, so when a credit report is pulled, it reveals all the names that you have ever applied for credit in.
Right,
Basically.
and they can have
And
typos.
then you have to acknowledge you are one and the same with all of those people on that sheet, right? So
Basically.
that's basically that's what
Yeah.
I'm getting at, like explaining to a new
Yes.
realtor, what are they looking at when they see 27 aliases on
Right.
a form?
Well, and that's a good point too, is when you're talking to your buyers and your sellers, ask them if they're married and if they're legally married, because you'll get people that say, well, I'm separated, and they're buying a house. You're still legally married. And then we do find some people will call their significant other my wife or my husband, but they're not actually married. And then it gets, we're going down to the closing time, and we're like, well, your wife needs to come. Well, nobody told me my wife needed to come. Well, you're married. Well, I'm not really married. We're separated. You're still married. Sorry, I get a little aggressive about that, but so make sure you're asking, are you legally married?
So let me ask you then one follow-up on that. What about a common law situation? If somebody's been living with someone for 7 years, is that still a?
Not in
No,
Florida.
Not in Florida.
Florida. Okay, good to know.
All right, back to stories.
Yes, tell a good story.
Oh, I thought I escaped that.
She's gonna start twitching.
I have many. I'm gonna keep them to
Okay.
my book that I'll be releasing
Oh, yes.
upon retirement.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm
Can all
thinking
read it
about that
then.
book too, so, Judy?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story about why you need title insurance and a claim that happened like 16 years ago or 18 years ago. So people say, why do I need title insurance? And I have 20 reasons for title insurance that I brought with me. So anyone who wants it, it's available there, or you can let me know. One thing we get is sometimes when people are dead and they have not recorded their deed, and so there's this person that is for the estate and he has a deed, but it's not been recorded yet, so, but the person's dead, so how do you record a deed into a dead person? So we've worked our ways through that, but my claim story happened to someone, and I drew a little picture, if y'all can see my picture. It's my picture.
Look at your cute little houses.
Career there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so say, okay, so
You can
this-
illustrate for my book.
Okay. So listen, this is interesting. And
They
this
share a
is like,
driveway?
you know, an easement. We're talking about an easement. So this is like Peninsula, and this is the street here that crosses. This house had a driveway that comes here and then crosses over this piece of property to get to this road because it's difficult to see around the corner. So they could come out of their driveway, but they'd have to look around the corner. So they liked going across this easement, getting on this and coming out and then going left or right on Peninsula, right? So this house got sold, several million, it was on the river, and they did not like that this easement was here and that people were continually driving across it, so they put up a fence. And it was one of these beautiful wrought iron fences, what they put all around their property, and they put here, and they stopped these people from coming through. And then these people said, well, wait a minute, we had this easement on our property since 1976, and you cannot block that easement. So the title companies got involved. This title company and this title company both had owner's title policies. It went for about a year where they argued over this easement. The title companies paid for attorney's fees to litigate in defense, which is really one of the most valuable pieces that we have in our title insurance, is that we will pay for litigation and defense at $350 an hour with these attorneys. So we had to get outside counsel. Oh yeah, I'm saying, yeah, we were one of them. We had to get outside counsel, the other company had to get outside counsel, and they duked it out in court. And what they finally came up with after about a year and a lot of money was the fence had to come down, the easement was truly there, and so, sorry Charlie, these people are gonna continue to go across your property unless they don't want to anymore and you ask them not to. So there's an example of why title insurance is needed 16 or 17 years later to fight out that problem and solve it for the party. And that's why you should get title insurance.
You talked about quitclaim deed. Back when I first started in this, we were dealing in one of the neighborhoods here in town, and they were third and fourth generation that had never gone through title insurance. It was just quitclaim deeds. Are you still running into that?
All the time, Tom. That is one of the major problems that delays closing, and we have to go back and get all these corrective quitclaim deeds from these people who may not even exist anymore.
That was the largest document that Cebu sold in the store, was quitclaim deeds. People could send it. True story.
Keeps us in business.
Well, we
Quitclaim
have just
deeds.
about 2 minutes left. Anybody have anything for the title representatives that we have not discussed?
A quick question, no one's ever closing without title insurance.
You wouldn't use us if they were closing without title insurance. I wouldn't recommend it, but
I don't think so, Samantha. I mean, I think pretty much Florida is one of the 5 top title insurance states in the country, along with New York, Pennsylvania, California, Texas. So people know about title insurance in Florida, so they wouldn't close without title insurance.
Anything that you all want to say for the good of the body?
it was fun. Thank you for having us.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we do so want to thank our title affiliates. They sponsor us in so many ways, and they save us in a lot of other ways. And so we want to give them a round of applause.